Good
Morning,
morning,
Jeff.
and thanks, Paul. And want to just get right into this. It's been a while since we could talk about an outlook like this, but I think it's here. And as we've heard some discussion here, big changes are in actually happening now as we speak. But certainly for the upcoming week, with hopefully a lot will get done here over the next week and a half. Starting though, looking at the last week, another cool, and certainly for the southern part of the state, another very wet week. Temperatures for the week itself ranging generally from 3 to as much as maybe 6 or 7 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. And for many areas, especially in the northern part of the state, this goes way back even into to March. It's been a very cool spring there. And as we most all know and appreciate, it's also been a very wet several weeks as well, especially with the rainfall that occurred here on Tuesday during the day. I picked up 112 at my place in Hazlitt. Actually saw at some of the peak rainfall rates, some standing water. I hadn't seen that very much this year, but again, an indicator of how much water is out there in the landscape, and it's a lot. Now, there are some exceptions here on the right-hand side. This is weekly total rainfall, at least through yesterday, and you can see that we did get a break in the far northern part of the state, up in the northern lower and into portions of eastern upper Michigan. The rainfall rates there were significantly less than they have been. But if collectively, again, looking at the last several weeks, we have, with almost without exception, we have been wetter than normal in the vast majority of the state, especially here in the western lower peninsula. That's been several inches of rain, and again, we're right there right now. But changes are occurring as we speak. Degree day totals with the cooler than normal weather, we lag. These are seasonal totals beginning of March. And I put this out here sort of as a proxy to look at our overwintering vegetation and crops, because with the cool temperatures and the wet conditions, soils have been cool, everything has been delayed. And if we put this in terms of calendar time and looking at degree day accumulations, most of the state, a good several days, 5 days to more than a week. Northern parts of the state, probably at least 2 calendar weeks behind where we typically are here for the first week in May. So we are, and it seems like that way it is, because we truly are phenologically behind normal. But again, changes are in place. One last one here, looking at current soil moisture conditions, and not a surprise, but we're still up for most of the state, at least in the 80th percentile. So the top wettest 20% of these early days in May here, many areas are at 90% or greater, some. So again, we're still way up above where we typically are at this time of the year in terms of moisture in the top 3 feet of the soil profile. Well, let's look ahead. Let's look at because again, there are major changes taking place, and most of the news you're going to hear here, at least I think for most of you, is going to be very positive. There are some exceptions here, but we look at the weather map here this morning. High pressure over the area. We've actually had some frost and some freezing temperatures across northern parts of the state here this morning. It'll be the last morning of that for a while, hopefully, maybe for some of you, maybe for the season, but that was confined mainly to the far northern part of the state. This high pressure system, the center of this, will slowly move off to the east over the next day or two. And then that, looking here to our south and west, our next weather system is this area of low pressure out over south central Kansas. And there are some similarities between this system and what we saw on earlier this week on Monday and Tuesday, but some notable differences here. One is that the weather system that's approaching us is certainly going to impact, I think, a smaller area of Michigan than the one did on Monday and Tuesday. There's a lot of dry air feeding off of this high pressure, this Canadian origin high pressure system up here. And there will be precipitation with this system that makes it into the state. But right now, and especially given the trends in the forecast over the last day or so, I think it's going to be limited to the far southern parts of the state. Most of the state, especially in the north and central sections, we're looking at an extended period of dry weather. Not only dry weather, but also a noticeable but significant warming trend, especially as we move into the weekend. You can see down the lower left-hand side here, this is a most recent radar pic. You can see some of the precipitation with this down over the southern Great Plains and into the middle Mississippi Valley. this has been a very, very active weather pattern. That's one of the reasons why we've had so much precipitation. And this system is just one of a series. But it does look like at least this one is going to be the last for a while, at least for a week, maybe longer than that. And as we move ahead here into tomorrow morning, you can see not a whole lot of movement. The high pressure is still holding its ground up here over James Bay. And we can see the precipitation here has, at this point in time, has moved into at least the far southern lower. So I think the big forecast challenge here is looking how far does that precip make it? And right now, the best guesses are that we'll see rain develop. This will be again a little bit like it was on Monday and Tuesday. Rain will develop in the far southwest corner here as early as maybe late afternoon, but probably more into the evening hours, and then very slowly spread to the east and north a little bit here overnight into tomorrow. And most areas, and I think right now we're basically talking about significant rainfall. And by significant, what do I mean? Well, probably about a quarter of an inch. There might be some areas right along the Indiana and Ohio lines that pick up a half an inch, but I think that's going to be rather the exception rather than the rule. And it's going to drop off rapidly, but mostly south, I think, of I-94 is where we're talking about the greatest threat, and diminishing rapidly. Probably not much precip north of 96 and north into central lower Michigan. So I think it's going to be a fairly rapid divide, or a dividing line, fairly sharp between the area. And some of those areas that are north of it that do miss the precipitation will still have some clouds here increasing today. But again, given how much water we've had over the last few weeks, and for the southern part of the state, this will be another challenge. But I think that's one of the only so-called flies in the ointment here in the forecast, because north of that, we're looking at dry and warmer conditions. And certainly after tonight and tomorrow, we will be looking at the same scenario for the southern part of the state as well, that it does get the rain. By Saturday morning here, the low pressure system, you can see it in Ohio, was still a little bit of wraparound to the far northwest in the southeastern corner of the state. But again, this is going to be scattered light rain, and in most areas we'll see less than probably a quarter of an inch total. So that's what we're looking at here in the short term. And as that system then moves off to the east, we open up southwesterly flow. We're going to see a big change in the upper air with a ridge going up over the middle of the country, including the Great Lakes region. And that clearly points towards a much, much warmer forecast for next week. And so we will see high temperatures here increase. It's going to be a little bit warmer today than it was yesterday. In most spots, probably some low 60s with upper 50s in the far north, and stay there for another day or two. But then we should be up into the 70s, especially in central and southern parts of the state by Sunday, and then even more warming on Monday. I've put the forecast high temperatures here for next Tuesday, because that's probably when we start to go above 80. That's right. You heard that right. 80 degrees Fahrenheit for a high temperature. And with looking at the guidance, it suggests that we may see 80 degrees in at least the southern half of the state, if not more, on an almost daily basis for the middle to latter part of next week, and even maybe continuing beyond that. Down on the lower right-hand side here, I've put a little image of the forecast jet stream flow on Tuesday morning, which coincides with the same day here again early next week. And you can see that big ridge of high pressure. And meteorologically, the odds of this and the confidence in this are very, very high. There's troughing out over the west part of the U.S., so cooler and wetter than normal out there. They could use the moisture certainly in many portions, but that big ridge is over us. And that is going to lead to this big change. And the next big question is, well, how long would this change to warmer and probably drier than normal weather continue? In terms of precipitation here, this is another, it's a little challenging, but as we get closer to this event, to this next week, it does look like, I think precip is certainly going to remain below normal. These are the forecast totals through next Thursday. Whoops, sorry about that, went too fast. And you can see white on there, white color for much of central and northern lower Michigan. That's no precip. We don't see that very often this time of the year. You can also see down near the southern border of the state along in the Indiana and Ohio lines, a quarter to maybe half an inch. That's where some of those numbers came out. And that probably, again, will be more the exception rather than the rule. But warm and dry is without question the direction here. We do have with this change coming after tonight and tomorrow, the next chance for anything significant in terms of precipitation, and it would be scattered, I think will be Monday or Tuesday next week. And it will be, again, scattered is a very, very important word here, because most areas will probably maybe just see a cloud or not see any precipitation at all. But that's the next chance. It will be, some of it will be luck in terms of your location. So while we might see some rainfall again, I don't think it's going to be anything widespread. So warm and dry, very, very strong likelihood here next week, possibly beyond that. So let's look here finally at our medium range guidance. How long does this pattern last? On the left-hand side here, this is the upper air, similar to what you saw here just an image ago, this big ridge right over the really the eastern half of North America, southwesterly flow aloft here. It all points to one thing, and that's, again, very, very warm conditions. A taste of summer. We almost have to call it that, a taste of summer. Now, the more difficult or the challenging one is, what about precip? And as you can tell from my earlier comments, there's going to be still an active storm track on the front end of this trough that's out on the western part of the U.S. So the big question is, where does that set up? How far east or west? Because along and to the west of that storm track, we will see likely wetter than normal conditions. And you can see that here in the indicated in the 6 to 10 day outlook. Certainly as the northwestern Corn Belt and into the northern plains, you can see that, but drier than normal to our south and east. And again, Michigan's right along that. Right now, I think the odds are, and the guidance points to this storm track being to our west. So we would be in the normal to below normal precipitation scenario. And again, that question, how long does this pattern change last? Probably at least for a week, maybe a week and a half. But it does show signs here. This is going out to the 8 to 14 day time frame. And we do see in the guidance, we see some de-amplification of the jet stream, which means there's the troughs and ridging features here are less pronounced than they are. It's certainly during that 6 to 10 day time frame. There still will be a storm track, but it looks more, points more towards a more west to east or zonal type of flow here as we move towards the latter part of May. So probably some moderation in temperatures during the third week, or maybe even a little beyond that. But it does mean an extended period, though, of this warm, dry scenario. So if we've ever had, this is one of the best opportunities we've had in a long time. And with the temperatures, with the sunshine that's forecast here, our soils should respond rapidly. And our drying rates are going to be up certainly at 1,500s to 0.2 of an inch per day on a daily basis next week. So things are going to happen really quickly. Have everything ready to go and have the logistics, the supply chain set up. So when you start, you can just keep going and take advantage of this, because we don't get windows or breaks like this very often this time of the year in Michigan. But this definitely looks like one of those particular periods. So finishing up here again, it's great to be able to talk about this change, but it is happening. It'll take a little bit longer for the far southern part of the state because of the system here over the next 24 to 48 hours. But even then, we will see rapid improvement and warm, dry conditions develop and continue for much of next week, and probably into the following week, at least partially into the following week as well. And I'll stop there and see if there might be any questions, but start with or follow up with a reminder for next week, the 12th of May. Our speaker here on the Virtual Breakfast Series is Dr. Marty Chilvers, and he's going to be talking about head scab and wheat. So that's next Thursday at 7 o'clock. And with that, I'm going to turn it back here to Paul and/or Phil. Thanks.